This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Decisions made in Washington can affect your portfolio every day. But what policy changes should investors be watching? Washington Wise is an original podcast from Charles Schwab that unpacks the stories making news in Washington right now and how they may affect your finances and portfolio. Listen at schwab.com/WashingtonWise. So we have to talk about that plane, right?
The Trump administration is preparing to accept a super luxury Boeing jumbo jet from the royal family of Qatar as a gift to be used as the new Air Force One.
I'm talking about the 747 that President Trump seems eager to accept from the Qatari royal family.
Described as a flying palace with a master bedroom, elegant bathrooms, and staircase, offered to the U.S. government.
I mean, I could be a stupid person, say, no, we don't want a free, very expensive airplane. But I thought it was a great gesture.
The aircraft would be used by President Trump as a new Air Force One and then transferred to the Trump Presidential Library Foundation shortly before he leaves office.
What? Qatar is giving us a plane that Trump gets to keep. He's like the reverse Oprah.
When I heard about this plane, there was pretty much one person I wanted to talk about it with. Andrea Bernstein.
So for Trump, this was a godsend. He's been frustrated that Air Force One is old and needs to be upgraded. And he's like, I'm getting a new plane.
My favorite fact about this plane is that it's not even new. It's like used. It's like 13 years old.
Well, but it's luxury. It rings the bells.
Andrea spent Trump's last term investigating all the ways his presidency and business interests overlapped. The result was the Trump Inc. podcast. So for her, there's a kind of deja vu to this plane news. Then again, the sheer numbers here still managed to shock. She says after the first time Trump was in office,
Congress put together a report on how much money Trump had accepted from foreign governments. And the amount was in the millions, single digit. And at the time, that seemed kind of shocking that he had taken all these millions of dollars from foreign governments.
But this plane is $400 million.
Exactly. It's $400 million. And also, it's just sort of really an out-and-out gift to make Trump's life more comfortable. And think about he's in Air Force One all the time. He is constantly reminded of the generosity of a foreign government with obviously all kinds of interests before the U.S.
But Andrea, the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has reportedly okayed this deal.
Well, it's that process is not at all transparent and not clear. And the Emoluments Clause says Congress has to approve it, not the Attorney General.
She also used to work for Qatar, right?
She was a lobbyist for Qatar. As a matter of fact, just side note, in Trump's first administration, he had a prohibition on people who had worked as lobbyists becoming part of his administration until 2 years had passed. Pam Bondi is one of a number of cabinet secretaries who were lobbyists right up until they were cabinet secretaries. So yes, she did work for the government of Qatar.
Wow, it just shows how far we've come.
Everything about this shows how far we've come. The amount, the generosity, the openness, Trump's defiance, every bit of it is on a completely different scale than we were talking about in the first administration.
Today on the show, why this administration's corruption problem goes way beyond a single plane. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Spot and Tango. Do you have a dog that you love, that you have to feed every day? I got one of those. Spot and Tango sent me some of their unkibble, which is like dried food, but it's made up of real ingredients, like turkey and sweet potatoes. My dog Bonnie and I tried it out. She loved it so much that we actually used it as treats. That's how good it was. Spot and Tango's Unkibble is made with 100% whole, fresh ingredients, like real USDA meats, fruits, and veggies. Spot and Tango will create a custom plan based on your dog's age, weight, breed, and activity level. They include a pre-measured scoop, so you're always giving your dog exactly the right amount. The best part about Spot and Tango's Unkibble is that it's dry food, so you can stick it in the corner, Ziploc it up, forget about it. But then when you pull it out, it's the good stuff. Upgrade your pet's bowl with Spot and Tango Unkibble. For a limited time, go to spotandtango.com/whatnext and use code whatnext to get 50% off your first order. That is spotandtango.com/whatnext, code whatnext to get 50% off your first order. spotandtango.com/whatnext, code whatnext.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices, and that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies, so you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the U.S. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
So we talked a little bit about the plane scandal, but I'm wondering if you can run me through some of the other Trump business dealings that have caught your attention over the last couple of months. Places where his family seems to be courting conflicts of interest. Like one that stood out to me is that the Trump family is opening a private club in D.C. They're calling it the executive branch, and it's going to cost you $500,000 to join. It sounds like Mar-a-Lago North, essentially. But it also sounds like Trump 1.0, the kind of stuff he did first time around. And then there's crypto stuff, which is more newfangled, I guess. Where would you start this story?
I think there's a lot of stuff that is going on all at once, as is sort of typical of this Trump 2.0. So let's start with the real estate deals. Eric Trump is the person who runs the real estate part of the family business on a day-to-day basis. And he has been traveling the globe announcing these deals. There's one in Oman, there's one with the Saudis. There's sort of big new development deals that are getting a lot of hype-filled announcements, which is, typical of the way the Trump family does business. They want to announce these developments and hotel properties and resorts so that people can buy in. They want to create an image of luxury that people are going to want to pay to be a part of. So that is sort of, traditional, going back, old-time Trump family business model. Then you have crypto, which Trump was a skeptic of for a long time.
Yeah, he was not a fan originally. But then all of a sudden he was like, oh, we may not like it, but we got to do it because we got to make the money.
He was convinced that it was a great way for him to make money. And that has proved to be the case. So there are two main ventures. There is the World Liberty Financial, which is a crypto venture that he set up not 2 months before the election.
And this is both like a crypto bank and a cryptocurrency?
Exactly. It's like a sort of, what we think of when we think of crypto. So that is World Liberty Financial. So he sets this up in mid-September. And you think about it, even though the Biden administration sort of had begun to try to build some structures to regulate crypto, even at the time, it was fairly unregulated, now even more so, and also quite secretive. It's very hard to track how the money is coming in. And this just created a vehicle for people who wanted to pay Trump, including people from foreign countries who, by law, cannot donate to inaugural committees and cannot donate to political campaigns, can actually buy into this. And just recently it was announced that Abu Dhabi, a fund in Abu Dhabi, was going to invest $2 billion in World Liberty Financial. Now, this is even more blatant with Trump's sort of second foray into crypto world, which is with his meme coin. And a meme coin is not a thing. It's not a currency. It's not something you can use to buy something. It is just a thing that you hold, like a, souvenir coin from a mint, with the idea that the more demand there is for it, the higher the price goes. So if you buy it at X price and then more and more people want it because they want to sort of buy into this Trump thing and it's named Trump, then the value will go up.
And just in the last month, Trump sort of did this thing where he tried to juice the value of the Trump coin by basically telling people, like, you can have dinner with me if you're one of the major investors. And so all of a sudden, boop, that creates a real interest in this thing.
Exactly. And let me just say, the structure of the meme coin is such that every time there's a transaction, Trump makes money. So somebody may lose money, the value could go down. If somebody sells them, Trump still makes money.
Because there's like a fee, like Ticketmaster or something.
There's like a fee. So no matter what happens, money goes to Trump. And even early on in his administration, there were estimates that he'd raised tens of millions of dollars. That is way, way up now.
What's to stop like a very random, even dangerous person from simply buying their way into a dinner with Donald Trump?
It is a sad but time-honored part of American politics that you will have a political dinner. If you give $250,000, you get a grip and grin with the candidate. If you give $1 million, you get to eat dinner with the candidate, et cetera, et cetera. However, with the meme coin, this is not a political donation. It's not going to a campaign. It's going directly to Donald Trump. And that's the difference, that he is saying that he is having a dinner at one of his golf resorts and offering a tour to the White House and basically saying you can get close to me, the president, if you are one of the biggest investors in this coin. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that.
If you're old, like we are, you'll remember how controversial it was when Bill Clinton was letting political donors stay in the Lincoln bedroom. But this does seem like a different scale. It just raises a whole lot of alarm bells.
Right. And the big difference, I mean, the Lincoln bedroom was just no question extremely distasteful at best. However, we're still talking about political money, campaign money. Now we're just talking about payments to the president. And that is a very different situation from the past.
Yeah. I mean, the contest over this meme coin dinner did seem to spur Congress into some kind of action. Like they were looking at passing a bipartisan crypto bill, and it seems like it got put on ice as this came up. So it did serve as a useful reminder of what's happening.
It's true. But will it ultimately happen? We'll see. I mean, the crypto industry has become a very big force in American politics, both Republican and Democrat. So we'll find out whether that remains permanently on ice. And let me also just say, regardless of that bill, Trump has taken many actions as president to deregulate the crypto industry. For example, the Justice Department dismantled its crypto enforcement unit. The SEC, which was sort of developing, a series of practices and regulations for crypto, that has completely flipped. The Consumer Financial Protection Board, which was another federal agency that was supposed to protect especially small-time investors from these kinds of investments, also gutted. So even without a new law by Congress, the landscape, if you are in the crypto industry, has radically changed.
Yeah, I'm struck by the scale at which the president is operating right now, because we're talking a lot about crypto, but it's not just crypto. Like the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released a report marking Trump's first 100 days, and they were like, we're going to list Trump's 100 conflicts of interest, which is a little bit...
I mean, conflict of interest doesn't even begin to describe what we're seeing.
Yeah. But if you go through the list, it's everything from like hiring real estate insiders to work at HUD to tossing out discrimination lawsuits against SpaceX, which is, of course, Elon Musk's company. It's like there are all of these connections that are really upsetting and smack of corruption.
I mean, I think what's interesting, the first time around, Trump seemed to have a sense that there should be limits. For example, when he announced his ethics deal, his lawyer said the Constitution never envisioned someone paying for a hotel room as an emolument. This time around, with everything so much in the public vision and in the public square, Trump seems to be saying, I'm doing this because I can do it. It's a way of defining his power.
Yeah, you're saying it's the come at me brah presidency.
I mean, I don't even know if that's what it is. I just think it's a way of him stating his power. I can do this. And, you know, I think with the immunity decision that came out in the Supreme Court in a compliant Republican Congress and a non-independent Justice Department, he's not wrong. He can do it.
After the break, what would it take to prosecute corruption in a time when the Supreme Court has eroded what even qualifies as criminal corruption?
In honor of Military Appreciation Month, Verizon thought of a lot of different ways we could show our appreciation, like rolling out the red carpet, giving you your own personal marching band, or throwing a bumping shindig. At Verizon, we're doing all that in the form of special military offers. That's why, this month only, we're giving military and veteran families a $200 Verizon gift card and a phone on us with a select trade-in and a new line on select unlimited plans. Think of it as our way of flying a squadron of jets overhead while launching fireworks. Now that's what we call a celebration, because we're proud to serve you. Visit your local Verizon store to learn more. $200 Verizon gift card requires smartphone purchase $799.99 or more with new line on eligible plan. Gift card sent within 8 weeks after receipt of claim. Phone offer requires $799.99 purchase with new smartphone line on Unlimited Ultimate or Postpaid Unlimited Plus. Minimum plan $80 a month with autopay plus taxes and fees for 36 months. Less $800 trade-in or promo credit applied over 36 months. 0% APR. Trade-in must be from Apple, Google, or Samsung. Trade-in and additional terms apply.
What happens if and or when the Trump administration defies the Supreme Court? Well, it's already happening.
The Trump administration is reading this as a license to dawdle longer in its half-hearted effort to comply with an edict from SCOTUS.
I'm Dahlia Lithwick. I host Amicus, Slate's podcast about the courts, the law, and the Supreme Court. Our recent episode examined how the Supreme Court's attempts to save face and de-escalate the constitutional crisis may be running out of road.
This is not a game of chicken where we back down from the Constitution. Like, that's not how this works.
What happens when the executive branch goes to war with the courts? We're about to find out. Listen to new episodes of Amicus every Saturday. Find us by searching Amicus wherever you listen to podcasts.
Okay, I want to talk about what it would mean to take all these schemes and allegations of corruption seriously. I think there's this sense that not much can be done, even though Republicans have started speaking out about, for instance, the Qatari plane. Like, even the reporter Eric Lipton, who wrote a big piece laying out how the Trump family's crypto bet is working out, he posted on social media, saying corruption requires explicit quid pro quo. It is not corrupt to take an action that aligns with the interest of a person who gives you a gift unless the official action was in direct response to that gift, a bribe. Basically saying, like, not quite there's nothing to see here, but like, hold on, guys. Let's not get too excited about all this. Is that true, though?
Well, funny you should say that. Where we are in American history right now, I recently taught a class, a journalism class on uncovering corruption. And on the first day of class, I told the students, we have to learn how to understand corruption separate from whether or not something is a crime. And the reason for that is twofold. First reason is, over the last 15 to 20 years, the U.S. Supreme Court has made it harder and harder and harder to prosecute a corruption case.
Yeah, we should say this definition of corruption that this New York Times reporter is talking about, it's basically accepting a Supreme Court definition of corruption.
Well, it's accepting the Supreme Court definition of what is criminal corruption. I mean, there was a case in Virginia where the governor of Virginia accepted a Rolex watch in exchange for trying to influence legislation in favor of the benefactor. And the Supreme Court said, well, that's not corruption because he didn't actually deliver. He just tried to deliver, and that could be construed as the ordinary course of business. In the most recent Supreme Court session, the Supreme Court had a ruling that a government official in the Midwest who had made a payment to a contractor that had benefited him after the action was giving a gratuity, that it wasn't corruption, that there was no quid pro quo. So in each of these cases, what you see is it's very, very hard to say something is criminal corruption and prove intent unless you actually do something like the former New Jersey U.S. Senator Robert Menendez and take a stack of cash and gold bars and then do something to help a foreign government, in his case, the government of Egypt. However, that doesn't mean that all of these things were not what the founders of the Constitution were worried about, which is a sense of an erosion of a sense of the public official using their official capacity to do something that benefits them privately. To say something is troubling or to define it as corrupt is not necessarily to define it as criminal. I should say, of course, the White House says there is no corruption, there is no conflict of interest. They would never do anything to violate corruption or conflict of interest laws. But circling back to the plane, I mean, I think that sometimes things are so obviously troubling.
I mean, Chuck Schumer has said he's going to put a blanket block on all Department of Justice nominees to protest the plane gift, for example. And, I heard that and I just thought, where have you been, Chuck?
Yes, I had the same question. It's sort of, if you can actually do that as a way to block these Republican initiatives, why did it take this, $400 million plane gift to bring us to that point? In most of the rest of the world, or in much of the rest of the world, paying money to the leader of a country to get what you want is part of everyday business. And what made the U.S. a beacon for so many years is that there were strict anti-corruption laws. You had to register if you were a foreign agent. There was the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. There were all these ways of trying to export an American system of values about how business should be done to the world to counteract all of that. And for many foreign businesses, the U.S. courts became the sort of place of choice to settle cases because there was a sense that there was a sort of rule of law and fairness. Now, all of that has been thrown up in the air, and instead of our system kind of taking hold in the rest of the world, the system that has obtained in so many of these foreign countries has now moved into Washington, D.C. and the governance of the United States.
Last time around you did this podcast called Trump Inc., which was investigative. It drew these lines between how the Trump family was operating, how the government was operating. And I think part of what I find so frustrating in this moment is that I think you and I as journalists believe our work matters. And it's frustrating to find ourselves back in the same place again, only it's kind of like second verse, same as the first, a little bit louder and a little bit worse. Where I was like, hold on, we knew this. We told you guys.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I feel like when Trump first ran for president, there was a tendency in the journalism world to not take him seriously. And I think there was a feeling after he won, oh, we should have looked more closely. We should have brought the things he was doing to light so people could make an informed decision. This time around, I mean, I certainly didn't feel that way. I felt, wow, we worked really hard to tell the story of Trump's presidency, of his post-presidency. And it's not because people didn't know it. You know, there were 5 trials. I know it's really hard to remember that, but there were 5 trials against Trump or his business between 2021 and when Trump took office. So it isn't for lack of the story coming forward or lack of telling the story that these practices are happening. That said, we cannot stop. We cannot stop pointing these things out, trying to explain what's going on, because this edifice that Trump is building needs to be described. And that is something that, you know, I know I feel committed to doing. A lot of other investigative journalists at the moment feel committed to doing. And, you know, the hope is that we will put this forward, if not to create any kind of action in society, in order to sort of stand up for what is the truth, what is happening, and creating a vivid picture. At the end of the day, that is our job as journalists.
Andrea, I'm so glad for you coming on the show. Thanks for putting everything in perspective for me.
Always great to talk to you, Mary, truly.
Andrea Bernstein is an investigative journalist and the author of American Oligarchs: The Kushners, the Trumps, and the Marriage of Money and Power. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Madeline Ducharme, Ethan Oberman, and Isabel Angell. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky, say hello. I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.